Okay, it's 5 o'clock, and I think since we have just 1 hour to go through everything that we have to go through, and I have all my guests here, I believe I just start. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today to this AFBE leadership session, where we'll be talking about leadership with a focus on communication and negotiation. So just a few housekeeping rules. There's no fire alarm today. If you have one, it means it's in your house, so run. So far, so good. If you have any questions, please post your questions on the comment section, which will just be on the tab section, the lower part or the base of the Zoom app. You can type your questions outright, and if your questions are complicated, I will call on you to please elaborate on your question. So without further ado, I would please ask all of you, if you're not one of the speakers, to please put your mic on mute. You can leave your video on or off, whichever you prefer, but please mute your mic if you are not the one speaking. Other than that, I think we're good to go. So I'll kick off with AFBE UK because AFBE is the one who's brought this event to you. So AFBE UK is a not-for-profit organization that seeks to get young people into engineering. Now, we have a special but not exclusive emphasis on people from BAME backgrounds, and we have a range of programs that focus on attraction, retention, and leadership. Please feel free to check our website at AFBE UK and AFBE Scotland UK for more information. Now, what we're here for today is Let's Talk About Leadership Part 1. Now, Let's Talk About Leadership takes a look at some of the key issues that makes up the glass ceiling restricting BME professionals from attaining leadership positions and responsibilities in their workplace. So what we aim to achieve in AFBE UK is to inspire effective leadership. Now, we all know that only secure leaders will give power to others to raise up leaders. However, no one becomes a leader overnight. You still have to build your collection of leadership skills. And there are many facets to leadership, among which you have respect, discipline, and vision. These facets need to be developed, and doing so takes time. And this brings me to the fine line of speakers and contributors and leaders in every right in our midst today. We have 5 of them. We are going to have discussions about leadership. We're going to get insights into their experience, which will be centered around communication and negotiation skills. And in the process, we'll try to understand the dynamics of the glass ceiling restricting BME professionals. So without further ado, let's start with the introductions. Myrtle, the first on my list.
Hello.
Self.
Hello.
Hi, Myrtle. Please, can you introduce yourself and your position, what you do, very briefly?
Yes, so my name is Myrtle Dawes. I'm the director at the Oil and Gas Technology Centre, and I've been working in oil and gas for more years than I want to recall.
Beautiful, beautiful. John, please, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, evening, everyone. I'm John Abolari. I've been in oil and gas 12 years with the same company. So it's been a privilege working with AFBE over the last few years, and hopefully we can all learn together this evening. I'm very keen on learning, and I hope today we all leave here with something.
Beautiful, beautiful. Chris.
Hey, Roy. Hi, everyone. This is Chris Krishna. I'm in the industry for about 20 years, specifically in oil industry for about 11 years now, and been in various roles in supply chain, quality, sourcing, so on and so forth, and always happy to learn, as John was saying.
Thank you. Bishop.
Greetings, And Roy, thanks for having me on this. My name is Bishop Falokwe, and I am director of Petroflow Consultants. It's a small consultancy with operations in a few countries in the world. And my work is in consulting as well as research. And I hope to be able to contribute to this discussion today.
Thank you very much. And finally, Lydia.
Hello, my name is Lydia Balogun-Wilson. I currently work for BP as an operations support team leader with about 15 people directly reporting to myself. But industry-wise, of experience, I've been in the industry since 2002, and I've worked in both Nigeria and the UK. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation that you can take something away from it as well as I can as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for that intro. Lydia, I'm going to start with you. You mentioned something. You have 15 people reporting to you.
That's correct.
That tells me you have quite a lot of responsibility on your hands. And from the little story I know about you, you were the first Black female with the senior leadership role in the BP North Sea. Am I correct?
That's right.
Wow, that's an achievement. So that means you know very much about what we're talking about today, which is leadership, you know, and that glass ceiling that restricts people from attaining, you know, high leadership positions within the organization. To start with you, can you tell me what your understanding about leadership is? And when you have done that, I want you to put into context, you know, how you have progressed through the ranks and attained such leadership position within BP.
Okay. Leadership, in my understanding, and it's not just leadership, but we're talking about effective leadership, is the ability to have a vision that's actually greater than yourself. And a vision that people are willing to get behind you to deliver. And you're happy to let that vision continue even when you're no longer in that role. And that's the type of leadership that a great company will look for. And so when your leaders have created a vision, there are two things they're looking at. Do you carry that vision, personalize it, and run with it with so much passion? And can you get others to join you to deliver that vision? And when you are moving on, can others continue with that vision? And so working with BP, I'm a very passionate person. People who know me knows that the glass is always half full. And when you're positive and you're optimistic, it's very infectious. People see it, people want to gravitate towards you, and it's very easy to influence others to get on board with what you're about to do. What is very, very important as a leader is you have to be effective at listening to others, not just dictating or insisting that things have to be done your way, but making people who are working with you feel that they have a stake in that vision as well, and they want to see it go through. And any good leader will look out for leaders like that. I look out for leaders in my team who are able to do just exactly what I've just described there. And I think that's what I've benefited from over the years with my current company is my leaders can trust, because trust, I bring that in again, is a very key factor of effective leadership. When people see that you trust them, you empower them, you don't second guess, you make them feel that when you're not there, they are doing as well as a job as when you are there. And your leaders will also do the same thing for you. So I want to believe that that has been one of the criterias that has gotten me this far. And I'm not afraid of hard work. I go into a room and I don't see myself as either a woman or a minority in a room. I believe that I'm as smart as everybody else sitting at that table. And I make my points, I get my points across, but equally I ask questions as well. And people love to see leaders that are effectuous, that can carry others along with them. And so, and they also want to see, can you make difficult decisions? Have you got the courage to make difficult decisions and see them through to actions? Can you stick with the values, and when people are not delivering the values, hold them to account? That's what you look for in a good leader. And that's what I want to believe I've been able to do. And by the way, leadership is a continuous improvement journey. Every time you get your next leadership opportunity, or even the next week, you hope to be better than the last time or the last opportunity you have. So that's what I'll say.
Wow, this is interesting. It feels like you have been watching me. You have mentioned key things that is embedded in almost every leadership book that you read: vision, respect, influence, followership, inspire. I mean, trust and hard work. What that tells me is, you have fully not just lived, you have embedded the qualities in you, whether you were born with them or you grew up with them, whichever one. You've shown that you work to become a leader. It's a continuous process, but you have to understand the key values that are attached to this. This is very great. I'm going to jump up to you, Bishop. My understanding is, you worked within a company and you came out of that company and you set up a company. You were trying to be modest when you said it's a small consulting firm. However, you have stake and contracts in many parts of the world, as far as I'm aware. So that to me is an achievement. So you must have taken something either from your previous life or from your past company, which you used in your current situation within your company to create something. Please tell us your story, and tell us, your story about leadership, please.
Okay, thanks for that. I think Lydia articulated or gave words to leadership in all its ramifications. And as you were speaking, it helped me actually identify the traits, qualities that allowed me to grow my company and be a leader in my own respect. And one of the key things that Lydia mentioned, that I think if I was to pick on a singular or the most prominent attribute that's resulted in my leadership success in growing my company to where it is that is what she said about vision. Now, when I worked with a number of consultancies and I tried to emulate or to pick up the attributes I wanted my own consultancy to have, I think the most prominent feature was I saw leaders that executed, or they became the vision of the company. So in a particular consultancy I worked at, where the consultancy wanted to be recognized as the go-to place for technical accuracy for specific specialist solutions, I noticed that the leaders in that company, the technical leadership of that company, were themselves technically capable people. So they almost personified the vision that they were trying to project about the company. So you meet the technical leader in this company and you are already impressed by his technical prowess, his clarity of a service, of the service he provided to clients. And so without even getting to know the vision of the company, just meeting the technical leaders already gave you that impression of what to expect from that company. And so based on that, my company was set up to project what I would like to call technical superiority. And so we became, or I tried to become, a personification of that vision and demonstrate in every opportunity that lends itself to us that ability to provide solutions in a cost-effective and efficient manner, because that's the vision we wanted to project. So I think, in summary, the number of things that contribute to an effective leader, as Lydia had mentioned, but I think for me, it had simply that ability to project the vision of your company and become that vision and use yourself as a reflection of the vision of that company. And that's what's kind of helped us get to where we have achieved, we have gotten to so far.
That's very interesting. You've mentioned something, project the vision of the company. I'm pretty sure when you started, there were a lot of hindrances, a lot of naysayers, a lot of negative voices who probably wanted you to either be grounded within your technical role within the company and not see you flourish. How did you deal with them?
Right. Now, I think, to be honest, you know, when you hear questions like this, it's sometimes you have to actually think about that experience you just described and try to quickly come up with how you did work around it. But I think, to be honest, I think because I'm in the knowledge industry where you are providing a service to people in need, and by people I mean the beneficiary or the client who needs consultancy services, and because the need exists for which our service is an answer to, it kind of made the obstacles that came along our way a little easier to deal with. And the way we simply dealt with those obstacles was to find a way to communicate our service and what our differentiator is to the ultimate beneficiary. So a hindrance to our growth, or to my growth as a leader of the business when I was trying to set out to start off, all the hindrances can be encapsulated into being interfering or being hindrances that would prevent us from getting access to the audience we wanted. And the way around that was we simply tried to come up with innovative ways, simple ways, but innovative ways to ensure that we are heard, that our services are, you know, seen, and looking for every forum we could create to make sure that we can help our target market correlate their problem and our solution. And so I think it was sort of being able to constantly navigate every obstacle that tried to hinder us accessing our target market. So it was a problem of access, not necessarily people. It was more systems that we just had to get around.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to come back to you because you mentioned something, how you communicated the vision to the people around you. John, I'll come to you. You've been in one company and you have risen through the ranks. And as far as I'm aware, you've risen to positions that I confidently am aware that only gray-haired people actually occupy. And you're clearly not gray-haired. So you must have been doing something right, but most importantly, you must have communicated in the right way. So please tell us about how your rise to where you are currently within Total, and what language of communication did you actually have to adopt, you know, to get to where you are?
Wow. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that question, and thanks to the other previous contributors for their comments. To answer your question directly, what I had to do once I started, I'm not going to pretend like I just arrived and everything was clear. You know, I started on my first year. I pretty much spent it just, you know, working hard. And I think it was after my first year, I said, there must be a clever way of doing it. You know, people talk about boxing clever. So it's not just to just throw punches, but how do you box clever? And in my second year, I remember very well, I read a few and I had to make a plan, and I employed my line manager at the time to make a plan. So we developed together. I made the proposal. Just I was having a weekend off, and I spent the better part of the weekend making a 7-year plan. And then that plan, it did a lot of things. It formed something around which we can discuss in the future. It formed a reference point to say, well, this is not what this is what we agreed, or this is what we would rather do next. Also, because there were different positions and different steps in that plan. If one wasn't achievable, I was able to demonstrate flexibility and compromise in saying, okay, why don't we do something else that was similar, but not too far from what I would rather do. So I was able to plot a path. So that did something that I didn't anticipate was that by year 5 into that 7-year plan, we were 80% covered most of what we set out. And before long, I had to quickly make the subsequent plan. So the planning was one thing. The other part was communication, and I was really pleased that communication in this particular discussion today is tagged with leadership. I had to communicate because, believe it or not, people cannot read your mind. So when they say, "What would you like to do?" A lot of us at times choose to be modest. A lot of us say, I want to be a good engineer, and those things are great. But I had to think beyond my wildest imaginations and communicate with people that matter that this is what I would like to do. And you have to just see where these guys are coming from. Because in your first few years, you don't have any track record. A lot of it is based on what you want to do. A lot of it is based on your ambition. You don't have anything to back it up until you start getting to 10-year experience. What you say, well, you can say anything, but who will believe you? So you have to really, very early on, decide what you want to do, if you know it, and then you start to, you say it and you communicate after you've convinced yourself that, one, you can deliver on it, and that is what you really want. For you to know what you really want, you need to know yourself. It sounds very, very Freudian, something you need to know yourself. If I can't convince myself, how can I convince someone else? Do I know the way I react in certain conditions? And I think even before my teenage years, I read a book at the time, Why You Act the Way You Do, that talked about temperaments. And so a lot of it had to do with understanding myself. And now that I understood myself, it was easy to communicate. Now, the way you communicate to the executive board is different from the way you communicate with the guys at the toolface. So I work in operations, and one of the things that has really helped is the ability to pitch my communication to my audience. So if I go offshore, if I'm offshore and I'm the operating authority on the platform, the way I'll speak to the guys is different from the next week when I'm back on the beach and I'm presenting to the managing director. And you need to be able to do that to pass your message across effectively to the right audience. But I had my first leadership position in 2014, my first formal leadership, because we're speaking about work, and you could be a leader in different spheres of your life, inside and outside of your vocation. So let's say at work, I was recognized as in a leadership position in 2014. And one thing that has changed between then and now is that I listen a lot more. I listen a lot more. Before I spoke more than I listened, and now I consciously speak less than I listen, because that is the way you are able to harness the strengths of the team. And that itself is a communication tool to say, I'm here for you, I'm listening, and we'll get through this with a common goal. So that's what I've tried to do in the last few years, and it's been really, really helpful, at least for my career.
This is very interesting. I'm so excited with the way the three of you have spoken so far. You have mentioned things. You created a plan. You communicated that plan. So you didn't just have a plan, but you communicated. In fact, you even have a very nice line manager, I must tell you. but you were able to communicate with him, you were able to express yourself, you were able to know yourself, most importantly. And there's a saying, the leader in you is actually seen before you are given any leadership position. So that means, they probably identified from your initial actions, the leadership traits in you. That's very important. It's very important that we get these keywords that they're mentioning, because they're not just keywords, but these are words that have guided their actions to becoming leaders in their place of work. Chris, I will come to you, because I'm pretty sure you have a few things to say. You are very much involved with standardization and quality, and you're also the head of diversity and inclusion in the UK. So definitely there has to be a lot of responsibilities and communication involved in your role. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to Lydia, Bishop, and also John. I think I heard many good things from all three of you, which I made notes of here. So thank you. So I work as Baker Hughes UK Diversity and Inclusion Chair. I'm chair of that. And what our work involves is across Baker Hughes in the UK, we have about mainly about 7 to 8 networks, including multicultural, women's network, pride, and veterans, and so on and so forth. So actually the work here concerns making sure that one, we are contributing towards the community externally from Baker Hughes. And number two, also within Baker Hughes, we create an atmosphere and conditions in such a way that diversity is encouraged, and it's not something which people just aspire for, but it is something which is there as a default. So that's the kind of vision we have within Baker Hughes. And as part of this, across UK, we conduct many programs. We have obviously various partners. AFBE is one of them. Obviously, we work with you guys very closely. And as part of this, multicultural is one of the key network across the UK. So coming back to multicultural, I'm also sort of leading at the UK wide. And here again, I go back to the point which Lydia said earlier. So when we go to any meetings, or we are donning any roles, you go to any leadership roles, you got to actually forget who you are in terms of your race or in terms of what you are. I think the question really comes in, how do you subconsciously or consciously overcome the barriers what you have in your mind that, no, I cannot go there because I'm this. So that leads to, I would say, key things which we try to focus, at least in some of these networks, and also through AFBE. I would refer back to, again, John, who was talking about communications, right? I think we know, all of us, we know about communications. If we ask what are the benefits of communications, I think there was one recent very good study, Washington University came up with many benefits, and few of them included like having better married life if you have better communications, making sure that your child or child gets a very good parent-child communications and self-esteem. Of course, you can earn more money through better communications, better number one, skills, which is required to go to work. So, and for so many of these things actually were benefits of comms. But when we look at the communication piece, right, each one of us have our own styles. And I don't think one size fits for all. But essentially, I think what's worked over the past 20 years with a lot of trial and error, and also maybe learning it the harder way, I would say the first thing, again, I point out to John, listening. Listening is not, I would say 4 things, yeah. Listening, and then you have non-verbal comms, which you need to be very, very aware of. Number 3, the emotional intelligence. And number 4, obviously asking questions. And listening is the first one is not really hearing. Listening is, I would obviously call it as active listening, where we clarify, ask questions, and also sort of reflect. And the second thing, when we come to nonverbal comms, we look at not just the body language, but we look at also other things like, okay, what's the facial expression, the tone or eye contact, and so on. Of course, we know 80% of comms is nonverbal. And then the final 2 pieces, emotional intelligence and the questioning skills. I would like to park myself on the emotional intelligence. That's the thing which really makes the difference in our work. Emotional intelligence, to put it in short, is first thing you are aware of your emotions, your mental state, and you also master your emotions. You are aware of how you are, whether in office or at home or wherever. You are very well aware of how your thoughts are. And the second part comes to the other side. When you meet a person, when you're in a meeting, your colleague, and I'm speaking to all these people right now, and if I'm speaking to Roy, I need to understand from my experience, okay, how is Roy today, right? Is there anything which I can see? So then I need to sort of adopt my communication towards that. So I would say that emotional intelligence is the key part in making sure that you make a difference and cross those barriers. So in short, yes, Roy. So those are the kind of overall activities we do across the UK.
Okay.
And also key thing, I would say, at least for our audience here and also the panelists, that comms, communications piece is the biggest of all.
Okay. It's interesting. We keep hearing the same thing: communication, communication, listening, most importantly. Now, before I go to Myrtle, I want to put a poll out there. So this poll is just a very rough question. All you need to do is just click on your laptop when the poll launches. It's question asking you about what you think your current situation is with regards to what describes you the best in your workplace. Maria, please, can you just launch the poll? Just 1 minute to answer. Just very quickly choose what you want and send, and it comes straight. Maria, have you launched it? Okay. It hasn't come yet.
It's come over here though.
Oh, has it? Oh, I can't even see it.
It's here.
Okay. I for some reason I can't see it. Okay, just 30 more seconds to answer. Okay, if we can just close the polls. Maria, can you publish the results, please? And can you tell me if it's published? I don't, for some reason,
Yeah.
my poll has disappeared. I can't see anything with regards to polls.
It's published.
Published. Okay,
Yeah.
what's the, I can't see it. That's amazing. Okay, just I would log on through my phone and I'll come back to it. So we will discuss that in just a second because it's not appearing from my own chat here. I don't know why. Now, before I go to Myrtle, I'll tell you a very, very short story. So I went for a meeting, an official meeting, and it happened, and I'd never met Myrtle before. And, it was with the manager and her team. So we go in and we start talking, and it just feels like we're waffling about. And immediately, Myrtle stepped in. And when she stepped in, at that moment, I knew that I was talking to the wrong person. And the wrong person, when I say wrong person, not wrong person, but I just immediately knew that there was somebody else in that room who had authority. And immediately I just asked Myrtle, I was like, please, can you introduce yourself? And she did. And since that day, I've been it's been my pleasure to know Myrtle. Just because she's also involved with an organization that deals with a lot of startups and technology within the Aberdeen space. So Myrtle, please, it's a pleasure having you. Over to you.
Yeah, so thank you, and what a panel to have to follow. So you haven't asked me a question, but I think probably it's the right thing to talk about the experience that we had together. So it was very interesting, and I'll just tell you some of the things which were happening that day, which I think may be useful. And so this is really around leading in a negotiation. And I'll say that there were 3 things that I had when I went in. I had a strategy. I knew what kind of behaviours I was going to exhibit, and I knew I had to have some deliberate communication already mentioned around active listening. So if I start with what the strategy was, I actually went into that meeting with a win-win. I had that is what I wanted to do. Win-lose would never have worked. The second thing is I knew what my remit was, and in that meeting I knew I had the positional power, but I was actually missing something, which was around information and expert power, because actually I was quite new to the organization. So I brought the manager in with me. So I think the second thing around the negotiations was really around behaviors. And the majority of the time, not all the time, transparency is your friend. So my style in that meeting was I said, show me your hand. So I asked the person who I was speaking to list what their issues were, and then we'd go through them one by one. And the reason I did that was so that we didn't have a meeting that went on all the time. We had actually picked a scope and put a line in the sand about what we were going to discuss. And that limited the meeting and ensured that we stayed within a boundary. And I think that's always something I do. I also showed what my hand was, but I think if you can show your hand and have it as a package, that's really, really useful. I think the last one then came to, what are we doing here in this meeting? And one of the really important things, and I think some of the other panelists have said this, you really need to quiet your mind so that you can listen. And when you're in this kind of situation, you really want to listen to what someone is actually saying to you, as opposed to what you want to hear, because it's not a debate. And it's not about taking people's questions out of context. It's literally about finding out, what are you saying to me? Reading back if you need clarity, saying I don't understand, and trying to be clear and concise, because to be fair, long sentences and paragraphs, people do get lost. So for me, when you go into these meetings, you do need to know why you're in the meeting. Keep an eye on what your strategy is. My strategy was win-win. So I was never going to leave unless I knew I was achieving that, otherwise I'd lost. Having a win-lose doesn't work. And I think some of us will know about this when you say have a session with someone where they come out losing, whether it be a supplier, you really damage that relationship and that trust. And you actually damage relationships, and then you can't achieve as much as you want to. So you have to be a leader, you have to know your mind, and you have to stick to the company strategy. So that's what was happening on that day, Roy.
Myrtle, if I may come in as well, I want you to also tell us about, because you had a hiatus away from the industry, you had your kids and all of that. And that's quite useful for a lot of women here who probably face the same type of issues. You came back after hiatus back into the industry. And not just that you came back, you rose through the ranks and very quickly as well, So you definitely faced a lot of obstacles. You know, you faced a lot of challenges, not just as from an ethnic minority, but also as a female. You know, how did you overcome those challenges? Because right now you're in a position that gives voice, you know, to what you're doing, to the female, to the gender race, you know, and I think it's very important that people understand that this was what you did, because quite a lot of females will be in your same position.
Okay, so that's useful. So look, I've been in the industry 30 years. You know, I started working in BP 30 years ago as a production engineer offshore. What I will say to you is, as much as it was very, very different, you know, you can only see through the eyes that you've got. And so for me, of course, it was very homogenous. There was just a lot of men, a lot of white men. I mean, I didn't see anyone like me. However, that is all that you see, so it gets normalized very easily. But because I could only, I mean, other people could see that I was black, but when I'm looking out, I don't see that. I'm looking out, I'm outward looking. So for me, of course, there were issues. I've got 2 children. I have various tips about how you get on in life. I mean, you do need to take some responsibility. I've always said to people that my ex is my best friend. You know, I've got 2 children to raise. Why would I put all of that burden on myself when, you know, you've got someone who wants to share childcare? But also, you know, I had the opportunity to do loads of things, and I didn't feel brave at the time, but I remember I went to Canada to on one of the very big projects there, and my son was 3 months, and he and I flew over to Newfoundland to start work on Terra Nova, and I didn't know any better, so I used to just ask for what I wanted. And actually now I don't think we ask so much for wanted because there's so many precedents, but I think there's courage about what really suits me. Ask for it, take it. But I've had a great time, and a lot of the time I have always lived in the moment. So if I'm really enjoying something, like I'm loving my job at the moment, I'm living in the moment. I'm not really looking too much forward as to say, what do I want to do next? And I think that opportunities come to you because you've got this zest and enthusiasm about what you're doing.
Wow, this is interesting. There's something you've said which echoes in my head. Ask for what you want. It's the same thing John said. It's the same thing Lydia said. It's the same thing Chris. You have to ask for what you want. So that means if we don't ask, if we don't communicate by speaking out, we might get the short hand of the stick, basically. That is exactly what it is. Now, and this brings me to negotiation. If you have to ask for what you want, you have to have an understanding of what's available, I believe. And even if it's not available, you need to understand if there's a possibility to create something, you know, that will be available for you. And you mentioned something when you had the meeting with me and my company. You said, "Show me your hand," which is a tactics in negotiation. You know, what I want to understand is, you know, how do you get someone to show you his hand if he's also waiting for you to show him your hand? How do you kick off in a negotiation? How do you, for somebody who is also of, if you find yourself to be of minority, there's always that self-limiting voice that rings in our heads that kind of slows us down or stops us, you know, from wanting to do what we want to do. I mean, Krishna mentioned that, you know, so how do you tackle that?
So I think you show your hand first. I've done that in many meetings. I've gone into meetings. I had a fantastic time when I was working in Central Consumer with Microsoft. We were 20 of us, no one was speaking. I said, I'll start first. This is what we want. We've got this, we've got £80 million. We want to achieve this. We don't want to have a bad relationship, and we want to have all our objectives met, and you have to have skin in the game. So that's how we started it.
Okay, interesting.
There's no misunderstanding. And then everyone's saying, well, how does that work with the money? I said, well, let's talk about what you're going to do. In reality, if you can sum up what it is that you want, because you know your remit and you know where you are, but you have to put both the tangible and the intangibles into the pot at the same time. No point in saying I want work done and then you've not talked about performance standards and KPIs. You've got to talk about everything. You've got to talk about good relationship. I talked about, and I'd really like to have a party, a kickoff party. I put the whole package in, tangible and intangibles, out there in the front. If it ends up being a third of the price now because you say, well, I'm not getting all I want, I need to go somewhere else to get some of that. So never be ashamed or afraid to put your hand first, because you have to at some point. It's just normally 3 hours later. And everyone's crystal clear. And then when things start to deviate, so I didn't really ask for that. That I don't need. So I think that the issue is you've got to be transparent. And when you're transparent, people do respond to that because they know who they're dealing with.
Okay, talking about negotiation, Maria, can you help me launch the third poll, please? We're just going to skip to the third poll just because of time constraints. The 1 hour is certainly not enough to host all of you and to get your views. But while Maria is launching the poll, I'm going to come back to you, Lydia. Now, you've been in a heavily male-dominated industry, and you've had to negotiate your way through. You know, you've mentioned a lot of brilliant things at the start, you know, talking about your vision, talking about trust, which is very important, you know. But how have you gone into negotiation when the people you're speaking to either already have formed opinions of you or, you know, they have judged you in a certain way?
Thank you. I think Bishop mentioned it when he said it's about living the value and living what you want to be. Myrtle has mentioned it about showing who you are from the beginning, not waiting to be shown. That means you're building trust. John has said it about being clear about where you want to get to, which is exactly what vision is all about. And Chris equally said it about emotional intelligence. For you to negotiate, you must be emotionally intelligent. You must be an effective listener. You have to be creative. You have to learn to know the person you want to negotiate with. Know your audience. We hear this said a lot. Some leaders are very, very busy. So you must practice and learn how to do an elevator pitch, because this might be a very influential leader. You've got less than 2 minutes. And ask yourself, if I'm ever in front of this person, what am I going to leave with them that they'll remember who I am? And that's what I do. I optimize my time with very senior leaders in the organization. And I make sure that my work speaks for me. I mean, Bishop said it about doing the extra. You've seen what people are doing. What's the extra that you bring along? What makes you stand out from everybody else? And John equally said it, showing them that you've been on a journey. What's your track record? People want facts. People want knowledge. People want to see. So they might form an opinion about you, but then don't carry that baggage into that negotiation. As Myrtle has said, you're going into that negotiation with, this is what I'm about. This is why I'm here. This is what I hope to achieve. And Chris has said it as well. Don't allow your minority, it's like when people say, oh, Black people are aggressive, Black people bang their table. Obviously, we've talked to 6 different people this evening. No one has been shouting and no one has banged the table. It means that it's a stereotype, and don't allow the stereotype to dictate who you are.
Precisely.
Be willing to be different, but in willing to be different in your thoughts, be different in your delivery, be different in your style to win in a negotiation. Myrtle talked about that, making it a win-win. Don't only just go in to make a demand, be willing to take the demands of others as well and reach a compromise. The aim of a negotiation is a compromise. Like John said, I do it as well. Here is where I want to get to in the next 5 years. I'm going to use open questions. What will it take to get me there in 5 years? And I hold my leaders to account. Each time we're doing a mid-year conversation, an end-of-year conversation, this is what we agreed. This is what I've delivered and more. I'm always trying, because as the great speakers have said this evening, the contributors, is standing out. And I also bring others along. That is a key. Do you grow leaders as you're growing? And that is how people can trust that you're a leader that has a vision and you're able to pass on the torch of that vision for the organization. Any position I find myself, I'm looking for who are the next leaders around me and how do I bring them along with me? How do I make sure that if I have to move on, there's already somebody waiting to take on that role? And that is very, very key in negotiation. In a male-dominated environment, what is common to all of us is how you think, how you deliver, your quality, what you stand for, what is your integrity, what is your trust, what do people know you for? If they picked 5 random people, what is the common thing they'll say about you? And where does that benchmark against the whole organization's vision?
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's very brilliant. Brilliant. There's something you've said. Now, from the polls that were launched, what is the greatest asset to have when you go into a negotiation? And most people think it's knowledge. Now, Bishop, I'll come to you very quickly, and you just have 1 minute. You talked about technical competency. So I'm pretty sure in areas where you either had to bid for contracts or negotiate for things, you definitely had to have knowledge. Now, in your own opinion, out of these 5 options that we have here, is knowledge the greatest to have when going into a negotiation, or is it value?
Okay, I think I did choose knowledge as the one that is key because we're in the knowledge business. So I would say knowledge is the key is the most important in my view of what you have. But one element is this that I want to highlight that is not on that list. I think being able to titillate your client, because in a consultancy, for example, where the knowledge is available, you're not the sole custodian of knowledge. There are other people that also have the same knowledge you want to pitch. I think the difference here is being able to know how to pitch that knowledge in a way that gets an interest. So in the current oil market, it might simply be pricing it right, or offering knowledge in a different package that is very specific to the needs of the client. So it's knowledge, but you need to be able to really titillate, entice, get the interest of your audience, because it's not every time the forum exists for you to sell services.
So wouldn't that be classed as value? Because what you're pitching to catch the interest is value. You need to show value, and value is what creates the interest. Wouldn't you say that?
Yes, I would agree. Now, in the case where that same value can be created or can be provided by others as well. So you have a number of companies that could probably meet that same value, but not be able to get it at the price point that you can. So you have to give better value. Yeah. So ultimately, it is getting better value to your audience, and however you do that is where I think the crux of a negotiator actually comes in. Not just being able to make the pitch, but knowing exactly where to pitch it at.
Okay. Chris, what would be your take on this? On negotiations and skills?
Yeah, Roy. Look, I think very valuable comments from Bishop, Lydia on negotiations. I think for me, again, from experience from 20 years, negotiations really can't be scripted, right? It's unique. One size doesn't fit all.
No.
You need to have a discipline, a mindset. You need to have a technique for each of the cases. So it's case by case basis. And the crucial thing for me, I was looking at both the value, emotional intelligence, and knowledge. Of course, all are key. But the key thing which may make a difference, like how Bishop was saying, all of them may have the same knowledge, but the key differentiator could be how good is your, again, I'm bringing in emotional intelligence, because the moment you are very high on the emotional intelligence, you have the capability to evoke a constructive behavior from the other party.
Okay.
This constructive behavior from the other party could be like maybe to help get a value which is more dearer to us from them, instead of potentially during negotiation evoking a potential negative behavior. So emotional intelligence usually helps you during the negos to differentiate yourself and trying to get this constructive behavior from the other side. I think that would be one of my key I think take on this.
Wonderful. I think what you've mentioned there is very important. You have to have emotional intelligence, because in the end of the day, you are dealing with another human being. So that means you need to be able to communicate and connect with that other person, on a level playing ground, on a normal field. So regardless of their position, you're dealing with a human being. So it's very important, so key things we keep hearing, you need to be able to communicate your goals. You need to be creative. You need to be clear about what you want. You need to have the knowledge, but also you need to be able to connect, emotional intelligence, with the people involved. John, what's your take? You've had to connect with as from people from various backgrounds, including the French, and if I'm aware, you speak Russian and French as well, do you?
To different extents, yes, you're correct.
So how do you tell somebody in French this is what you want?
Well, you need to understand where the guys are or the people are culturally, I have to say. So, for example, when I moved offshore, I struggled because I had an office culture where things just make sense. But offshore people, they want you to be direct. They want you to be tough. They want you to just, there's a way they work offshore that we don't do in the office. So getting that across took me some time. Right? When I look at my French colleagues, they are quite direct in the way they speak. So when you come to speak with them, don't waffle. Just lay it down. I would like to think that my British colleagues are a bit more, we're a bit more nuanced in the way we speak. We are very, you're very aware that you may hurt the next person. So we tend to demonstrate empathy at all times. Whereas, way back in Russia, just say it the way it is. You don't mess around. You just say it the way it is. So, but there's a lot of situational awareness in the middle of all of this that we cannot elaborate upon given our time. But you need to really understand your audience and the different cultural aspects that they bring to the table when you are negotiating. So what goes, for example, at times at work, we have a meeting to have a meeting, which is very frustrating for some people. But that is just the way it works. We make our decisions a lot of times at the coffee point because that's the way it works. We go for coffee and over an espresso, that's where we really have the meeting. But the meeting we called was just to say, right, we're going to have another meeting and I'll see you then. Some people do it around golf, so the cultural aspects of negotiations is immense. And I've seen a bit of it. But that's just what I have to contribute at this time.
And that's very important for each and every one of us to be aware of. Be aware of your climate. Be aware of your environment and the cultures that you find within your environment, as this is very important before you go into negotiation. Now, there's a question from Susan, and actually it's for Chris. It says, do you have any insights around particular training or development to improve emotional intelligence? And I think this is a very important question, because we talk about emotional intelligence and how it affects, you when you go into a negotiation. Can you receive training on this?
I can you hear me, Roy?
Yes, we can. We can
Yeah,
hear you.
so specific to emotional intelligence, of course, within Baker Hughes, there is a lot of resources for that. And I think as part of partnership with external organizations, definitely that will be one of the things which the multicultural wing of the network will be doing in the future. What I can suggest is that very clearly there are very good sources where we could get that kind of knowledge base. In addition to that, I think the crucial one is any of the leadership books or the knowledge what we have today, an essential element is on the emotional intelligence. So I'm happy to sort of share those, what I have gone through over the past few years. Maybe offline I can do that.
Okay, thank you very much. It feels I really don't want this to end because I feel like I have not milked enough from all of you. But unfortunately, we you know part of leadership means you have to keep in mind.
Roy,
Yes,
Roy,
yes.
is there maybe a few minutes for one or two more questions, just so that we?
Okay, have you got one then?
Well, I've got a question, but I'm aware that there are other people who might. So, do you want to allow just a few more minutes just to
is
give
there
people?
any? Okay, no. So okay. Well, this is not a question. I have a contribution from Abby, which he mentions BATNA, which is best alternative to negotiated agreement, is important. To be fair, that's the first time I'm hearing BATNA, and that's the thing you get when you're dealing with people like Abby. They come up with very novel things. I think this is something we need to check out. But is there anyone who has a burning question that you would like to ask? Let's just use the last 5 minutes to round up. You can unmute your mic and speak, or you can write it out if you're very fast in typing.
I mean, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, the question is as regards to just like what John was saying. You see, when you get into a company and obviously you have plans and you have them written down or you have them in your head, and then you realize that the culture in the company is more tallied towards reward for loyalty, if I say that. So it's more like the longer you stay, the further you go kind of thing. And you can see people in your position and you know how long they've worked there and you really like the company, but you just don't know how. What would your advice be on how to, well, to project yourself in a way that people don't feel like you're being too much or you're being too extra, basically?
Anyone on the panelists?
Yeah, I think if I understand your question correctly, so you're mainly talking about branding yourself, right?
Yeah,
yeah. I think I'm sure most of the panelists will agree. So branding and networking is part and parcel of anyone's career. However, I would say this, what few of my mentors said in the past. If you branding is imperative, you got to do that. You need to differentiate yourself, and networking would aid you to get the right balance of how far your visibility should be. But also, please remember, if you have talent and if you have the visibility, that's fine. And if you, for some reason, whatever genuine reasons, if there are difficulties on the talent and if you have the visibility, it can also work backwards. So to get the right balance, I think it's crucial to first differentiate yourself on your own brand. And then next, I think to get the views of perhaps some of your mentors within the company to say what should be the right balance. I would say that's my take.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. One question which I would ask, and I'll answer this, it says from Stella, what I hear from younger BAME colleagues is how to find the right mentor. How can we help them? First of all, for a start, Stella, I would advise you to advise your young BAME colleagues to join AFBE. First start. Within AFBE, we try to create a system where you can network and you can get in touch with people who can potentially be your mentors. And I'll give you an instance. We have people like Myrtle, we have people like Chris. These are all people that, and John, they're all part of AFBE, and they're involved and they help out with our programs, you know. So you need to network more with people to find either someone within your industry who can potentially mentor you, or someone out with your industry, whichever you prefer. But I would say that the best way to get mentors is to put yourself out there, network in organizations like AFBE, and go for other events as well. And eventually, because mentorship is a two-way thing, the mentor needs to like you, you know, or at least needs to accept you to be able to mentor you. You know, so you can't go and tell somebody, I want you to be my mentor, and immediately he'll say, oh, that's good, I'll take it. No, if he doesn't like you, he's not going to accept it, you know. And they would accept people who they feel they can connect with and who they feel have a genuine need, you know, for that. Now, with this, I will come to an end. I want to say thank you to our 5 speakers, to Myrtle, to Lydia, to Bishop, to Chris and John, who's joined us all the way from Port Harcourt in Nigeria. I would like to say thank you very much. 1 hour is not enough to get everything. So I'm thinking we're going to have a follow-up session with you guys where we would continue the chat later on. Just for everyone who's logged on, we have the part 2 of this Let's Talk About Leadership next week. Same time next week. And we have an interesting lineup. We have Abby, who's actually on the call here. We have Ollie, our AFB chair. We have a lady who's also coming, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Atkins. So I'm pretty sure you would also want to hear from her. We have a lawyer with loads of experience, and it would be good for you to attend that one. So we'll be talking about limiting behaviors. You know, so some of it has been touched on by Chris, you know, and some of it has been touched on as well by Lydia and Myrtle. So what are the limiting behaviors, you know? And these are the things that we hear in our head, and these are the things that we say to ourselves that either stops us from progressing with our vision, basically. So with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone, and thank you to AFB for the platform to have this meaningful conversation. Like I've said, you know, at AFB, we want to inspire effective leadership. So this is just the beginning. What we want to do in the end is to be able to create, you know, a good leadership program that everyone can be a part of, you know, and everyone can learn from, and people can take real, valuable, meaningful experiences from others who have been able to achieve great heights within their organizations. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to everyone, and hope to see you next week for the part 2. Thank you.